Hello and welcome to the North Carolina Museum of History and the 27th Annual American Indian Heritage Celebration Education Day. Our presenter, Senora Lynch, will start in just a moment, but we want to begin with a few notes. Remember to ask questions in the chat and we'll do our best to respond to them and share with our presenter. We have many additional resources about American Indians in North Carolina on our website, nc-aihc.com. We thank the following sponsors of the North Carolina Museum of History Foundation, helping to make this event possible. Now, let's get started. Senora Lynch, a member of the Haliwa-Saponi tribe, is well known for her handmade pottery, which is made using the tradition of hand-coiling white and red clay. Hey, Senora, what are you sharing with us today?
Hello. Can everyone say jog de log? Jog de log in our language means hello, how are you doing? You will respond by saying shiki ketnaha. That means I'm doing fine, thank you. Mokor and mechin kiho means you're welcome to be here and thank you for having me here today. My name is Senora Lynch and I'm a member of the Haliwa-Saponi Indian tribe of Hollister, North Carolina. We are one of the third largest tribes in the state of North Carolina. We have 8 tribes here all together. Our tribe is one of the third largest tribes, and we live in the eastern northeast part of North Carolina, right at the top of North Carolina, right near the Virginia border. And we have about 3,800 tribal members that's a part of our tribe. So we have a small Indian community that we live in, and we have our own tribal school called the Haliwa-Saponi Tribal School. We have our governmental building, which is called the Chief W.R. Richardson Building, in honor of our chief. We have our chief today is a female, and her name is Oglitri Richardson. And so she is the chief of our tribe now. So we have our 11 tribal council, and we carry out our tribal business for the benefit of our people. I am an artist, a potter. When I grew up, I didn't really know myself as an artist. That was later in life that people would describe me as an artist. But growing up in the area in which we live in, we started making pottery. So we were reviving our pottery in the 70s. And so the elder women were making pottery and the men were making pottery. And they asked myself and my husband to come help, just do whatever was necessary to get the pottery class going. And so as the women were making pottery, they began to teach me how to make pottery. So they would teach us how to collect the clay, how to get the water, and begin to teach me how to make the different shapes of the pots. So all of my pots are all hand coiled pots. So I don't throw on the wheels like many people do, the wheels that spin around, electric wheels. I do everything by hand, so I do traditional hand coiling. And I'm going to demonstrate how to make a small bowl using a pinch pot method to make a piece of pottery. So the pottery you see on the table is all handmade with red clay and white clay. And when I was younger, we used to make just kind of plain little bowls, little cups, saucers, and things like that when I was a little girl. But as I got older, I began to make more bigger pots or more constructive pots, or pots that were actually that you could actually use for using different things to put water in, put your food in, to have ceremonial smudge bowls that we would use to do smudging in during our ceremonies. So I began to make pottery when I was just a young girl, and they would just teach me how to shape the clay and how to make things. So when you look at the pottery on the table, you can see I have lots of different designs on my pottery. So my work is called Living Traditions. And so I call my work Living Traditions because it's based on the living things, the things that are alive, but also the traditional things that I was taught as a young girl. And so when I first started making my pottery, I started thinking, well, how am I going to create my designs? What's going to make my pottery my pottery? So originally, when I first started making this pottery, I made a historical replica of an old face pot. And when I made the face pot, when I painted the red clay on top and I carved my name into the bottom, the inscription went through the bottom, and I said, this is how I'm going to make my pottery. So when you look at the table, I have lots of pottery with different designs, but I also have an older style piece, which is right here. And that's more of an old style. And so when you dig up pottery here in North Carolina, you'll find a lot of pottery shards that are broken, and they are made and look more like this piece of pottery right here on the front of the table. And so it has different textures on that piece of pottery, where the rest of my pottery is carved with a tool, a small pencil-like tool with a very sharp needle on it, and I carve my designs into my different pieces of pottery, like the big one you see right here. And I'll tell you a little bit about those designs as we go along. So what I'm going to be doing is showing you how to make what's called a pinch pot. And so this is red clay, and I'm going to be pounding the clay and shaping it into a small bowl. And as I'm working, I'm going to be talking to you also at the same time. So I call my work living traditions, and I base it on what we call old sayings or beliefs or animals, trees. We believe the earth is living and it's part of our family. And so I decided that I was going to put different designs on the back of my pottery that represent the traditional ways of our people, which is living off of the land, knowing the trees and the animals. So while I'm patting the clay like this is called kneading the clay. And what this does is it gets your clay shaped, but it also gets out your air pockets. So when I was a little girl, the women were making pottery, and I was just like a curious child. Always loved hanging out with the older people. And as I would sit with them, they would tell me things about the bear, things about the flowers, the birds, the signs of the weather. And so what I'm doing now is I'm beginning to shape this into a bowl. And I start by putting one finger into the pot, like that. And then I'm going to open it up wider. Pottery historically was used to cook inside, also to carry water, to store food inside. A lot of dried food was stored inside, different shapes of pottery. Pottery oftentimes was put down underneath the earth to store and protect the food. Pottery is used in our ceremonies, in our wedding vases and ceremonies, coming of age ceremonies. Pottery is used for many, many things. Now, oftentimes we'll talk about pottery in its historical way because it was used in the past, but it's also used in today's world, in the modern world. So we are here still living, but also adapting to the ways of the world. So when you dig up old pottery, it looks more like this one, but my pottery looks like this. And so oftentimes I think sometimes, what are the scientists going to think one day when they dig my pottery up? Because the earth is changing so much and the world is changing so much. So I think about the designs that I have on my pottery. Are these things going to be here in the future? So this is the bowl that I'm working on right here. So this is called a pinch pot. And this will be used as a small bowl to drink from, or a small bowl to eat cereal from, or a soup. So this is called a pinch pot. And it's just a really quick little method of making a small bowl. But I want you to notice the shape of it. See the shape of it? Now the shape is actually going to change, all just by using my hands. So it's called a pinch pot. It's made out of red clay. And this is white clay. And I paint the white clay on top of the red clay to carve my designs. But I have to wait until the pottery is at the right stage for painting the white clay on top of the red clay. And if you notice, as I'm working on this, the bowl is changing. Now I have completely changed the shape of it. Now it looks more like it's gotten wider, it's gotten thinner, and it changed the shape of it into what we call a puki. So a puki is a vessel or a small bowl that is made to form other bowls on the inside. So when you see this bowl right here, you can see the bottom of it has a curved shape, which is what we call a conical shape. And then these bowls are made to form these bowls on the inside. So that's how we begin to get the shape of the pots like this. And the reason why it's shaped like this, because this is used to sit right in the fire when you're cooking, and it sits right in the middle of the fire so it stands up while it's cooking. It also creates a very even way of cooking food on the inside of a pot. Now you notice that particular piece of pottery has a lot of smoky colors on it. And the reason why it has smoky colors is because it's fired in the ground called a pit. And so we use oak trees to fire the pottery. We also use pine, and then we throw in corn cobs to give it heat. And so the corn cobs is part of the firing, which is this right here. Also, if you look at that piece of pottery, you can see it has textures on there. And the textures are actually made with a corn cob. So there's a lot of things that we use a corn cob for. And you can think about that as you eat your corn. It came from our native people. And the corn cob is used to put designs on the pottery, is used to throw into the fire to make the fire hotter. We use it as a stopper for our jars. We also use it as a fishing cork. So the corn cob is used for lots of different things. But now this piece of pottery here is called a puki. So that's how we shape a small pinch pot into a bowl. Now on the table, I have some different tools that I use. This is a trimming tool used to trim the pots. Used to trim the pots. And what it does, it makes it smooth and nice and even. So this is a trimming tool right here. And this is made out of a red oak tree. This is one of my scratching tools, or sometimes we call it a scoring tool. And the scoring tool is used to scratch the pottery, and it makes it stick together. So when I'm doing the coiling, I'll scratch it with this tool called a scoring tool. And it's just a little stick made from a pine tree. And then I took these little needles and stuck in there and created my own tool out of that. This is a snuff can lid. And this is just an old snuff can lid that came from my grandfather because he dipped snuff. And this is used to trim the pottery as well. And this is one of my favorite pottery tools that I actually use, is the snuff can lid, because it really works in trimming out the clay. This is a rock, and the rock is used to polish the clay. And so when the clay is dry, almost dry, a little bit past what they call leather hard, is used to polish the clay, and it makes it really, really shiny. It's pretty awesome how the rock works to make the pottery shiny. This right here is called a paddle, and this is called a fishnet paddle. And this also makes different textures onto the pottery. So it's really cool to be able to use natural materials just to create your pottery. So you don't need a lot of tools to make pottery. You basically just need clay and water and your hands and your imagination to create different types of pieces of pottery. So that's how you make a pinch pot. Now I'm going to show you some of my pots and talk about the designs and how I create my ideas for my work. This one right here is a bear. And the bear is called my brother's spirit. And the bear is a very, very important animal to our tribe. The bear is called my brother's spirit because he's the strong one. He holds his people on his back. And so on this particular piece of pottery, it has the bear, it has the turtles, it has deers, it has birds, it has wolves, it has all these animals running on his back because he's the strong one. And so he's holding his people up. This right here is called bear grass. And bear grass is a very strong plant that we use to get rope from. We also make baskets out of the leaves. And so I put that on the feet of my bears to represent he's part of the bear grass, he's part of the strength. And my mother would always tell me that when the people would go into the woods, they could talk to the animals. And the bear is one of those animals which would teach them how to collect their medicine plants. So the bear is part of the medicine plants. And so all the flowers on his back represent Mother Earth and represent our medicine plants. Because years ago, we didn't have doctors. and our people would actually go into the woods to collect their native medicine plants to heal other people. My grandmother and both sides of my family, on my grandfather's side and my mother's side, are both medicine women. So my grandmother was a medicine woman. This pot right here is called the robin dance. And this is in honor of the robin bird. The robin comes out in the springtime. He's one of the first birds to come out to let us know that the cold weather's going away and the springtime is coming. And the reason why it has this running effect like this is because it's part of a dance. So we watch the robin bird as he comes out. He goes up and down and up and down and up and down, and he's looking for food. And so the robin dance is in honor of the robin bird. So this pattern right here is where he's flapping his tail up and he's dancing. He's letting us know that springtime is coming. It's time to go out and dance and celebrate and have a good time. So this one is called the robin dance. And at the Haliwa-Saponi powwow that we have every year, we do the robin dance to represent the springtime is here, and that we go up and down looking for food. This one is a deer design, and this one's called the Great Hunter. And this is in honor of our men, because usually our men are the hunters. We do have a lot of women that hunt as well. One of my relatives, my Aunt Lacey, she was actually known as one of the best hunters in our community. But this one is in honor of our men, and this design came to me in a dream. And so one night when I was sleeping, I saw all the deers running around, and then it has a swirl, and the swirl symbolizes the spirit of the deer. It means that when we take the deer's life, we take a part of his spirit. And we believe in using all the animal parts. We don't go hunting just for the sport of it. We hunt because for the need of the food and for the clothing. So we make dresses out of the hides. The men make something they wear on their heads called a peshaw. It's from the deer's tail. We make tools out of the deer's antlers. We make musical instruments out of the deer's toes. And so every part of the deer is used. And so we give honor to the deer. And that's what the spirit line is about. It's about honoring the deer and the purpose and all the things that we get from the deer. This one right here is a solid white piece of clay. And this is a sculpture of a corn woman. And she represents the corn, squash, and beans. So she's part of the three sisters. So she's the corn woman, and she's the giver of life. And I did this in honor of our family because traditionally our women are the main ones that take care of the crops. And so we take care of the garden, care of the corn, the beans, the squash, tomatoes, cucumbers, all of those things the women are responsible for. But she also carries the seed, because women can have children. She is a fertility symbol to represent that she carries the seed of the future. And all of our little babies come from the corn seeds. And if you ever eat a piece of corn, you know it has lots and lots of kernels, and those kernels become seeds. And so she's in honor of that. And I put the necklace on her to represent her beauty. So in the midst of all of her hard work, she is still also beautiful. And her necklace is made out of a purple glass, but also made out of what we call wampum. And wampum is a traditional bead that our people use to share, to trade with, to tell stories. And it was actually the original money of America, because Native Americans would take wampum and make little tiny beads and then trade it for other goods, such as baskets, stone carvings, water vessels, gourds. So our people would trade with each other. And so the wampum beads are very, very special. And even today we have lots of people that are carrying on the tradition of cutting the wampum and making it into beautiful beaded pieces and necklaces. This right here is a Dreamcatcher turtle. This is another idea that came to me in a dream. And so while I was sleeping, I saw the turtles crawling in my dreams, and the webs began to form in the back of the turtle. And so the creator said, this is how you're going to make your dream catcher. And on the back of this particular design is called Blackberry Winter. And this comes from the old saying that when May comes, the winter time is going away, the spring is coming, but the weather still has a little bit of a chill in the air. and it tells us that the bear is coming out. He's going to come out looking for food, but also that the blackberries are blooming. And so that's how I get some of my knowledge from our tradition. So if you look right here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 5 dots represent that May is here and that the moon is changing and the blackberries are about to bloom and the bear is coming out looking for food. But the dream catcher itself represents our dreams. So while we're sleeping, we have good dreams and bad dreams. And the good dreams come off the feathers into your life, and the bad dreams vanish by morning. So this one's very different than the traditional dream catchers. The original dream catchers were very tiny. They hang over the cradle boards of our babies, and they would only have one bead on the inside. So this one is very different than the old style. This is more of a contemporary style of making our dream catchers. But this came to me in a dream, and I started creating my dream catchers like this. So I have my own very unique way of making the dream catcher. This one right here, this is a hand design, and this one means that I call it your hands can heal. And I did that because I wanted to imply to others that we all have the ability to heal with our hands. We can hug each other, we can touch each other, pat each other on the back. Many people believe they can touch and heal with their hands. My grandmother would say she could heal with her hands. And so this one is in honor of reaching up to the Creator. And it means we're asking the thunder and lightning to come and bless us and give us that strength that we can heal with our hands. And on this particular design, this one also has the swirl, but this has the spirit line that never ends. So you go into the spirit and you come out of the spirit. So it's a never-ending line. This one has the corn, has berries, it has tobacco, and has birds. And we're told that in the morning time, when the birds come out, that's when you should collect your medicine plants. And so we live by nature and we follow the signs of the birds and the animals. And so our people would say that when the birds come out early in the morning, that's when you can collect your medicine. This one right here is another one of my big pieces of pottery. And this one is the 4 directions. It has the earth, the wind, fire, and water. And we cannot live without any of these. We need the earth, we need the wind, we need the fire, and we need the water. And all of those are called the 4 elements, or the 4 givers of life. And so they represent the 4 winds of the north, south, east, and west. And so each of these are put inside the turtles, and it has the 4 turtles. It has hummingbirds to carry our spirits up to the sky. And you'll notice on a lot of my pottery, I use a lot of dogwood flowers and corn designs and tobacco designs. Those are called our sacred plants. The dog flower is a symbol of springtime and new beginnings. So it's one of our very, very important flowers. I have one more piece of pottery to show you, and that's this big pot right here. And this piece of pottery is called the gift. And it's all about the gifts of life. You can see I have turtles on here. I have corn around the top. I have a tobacco design. I have a dogwood design. So this is called the gift of life. And around the very top of the rim is called a crisscross pattern. And that comes from the beaver's tail. So wherever there's beavers, there's a lot of life, a lot of fish, a lot of greenery, and everything is real lively where the beavers are. And so our people would say, wherever the beaver's tail is, that means that life is plentiful and good, that we have all that we need. And so the corn is right here. This is the corn design. This is a tobacco design. This is our spiritual medicine. This is our physical medicine. And this is the turtle, which means long life. It means fertility. It means our blessings into our home. And then the dogwood flower is right in the middle for springtime and new beginnings. And this is a big pot. It's a really big pot that I coiled. And it's all made with about 20, 25 coils built up to make this into this big bowl. Now, traditionally, this would be used as a cooking pot, just like this one is used as a cooking pot. but this is used as a bigger cooking pot. Now, I don't use my pottery in the same way that my ancestors did, not my big pots. I do still use ceremonial pots, and I do still make wedding vases are used today, but most of these pots are just ornamental, and so they're decorative and they teach the stories of our tribe and our tradition. And so I think that my pottery tells the story of who we are. And I developed my own style, and I thought about how I can preserve our ways by creating my designs into the pottery. And so that's how I make my pottery, and that's how I came up with my ideas and my designs, was through the clay. We always say the clay talks to you. The clay can speak to you, can say different things. And whenever I make my pottery, I always say a prayer over my art. We're always taught to give honor to the Creator when we make things, and we're told that this is a gift, and we have to share this gift with other people. And so what I do is I go into the schools. I teach a lot of people about our tribe and our history. I talk about our pottery. And so the pottery has a spirit. The clay has its own spirit. And the spirit of the clay will teach you how to make your pottery and what you should put on the pottery. So I never in my life thought that after I learned how to make pottery, I never really thought about how it would take me into different directions in life. I thought I was just making pottery because it was part of our tradition. And then the Creator gave me another place to use my pottery. So I go into a lot of the schools and I teach a lot of the students. And I also feel like I'm teaching some of the teachers, because over the years I have found that teachers do a really good job teaching about the Native Americans. So they are getting much better about teaching the truth about who we are. So that's how I make a pinch pot. Do we have any questions?
Yes, we have lots of questions. Everybody is amazed and stunned and really happy to see your work and think it's beautiful. So one of the questions we have is, does it take a lot of strength to make pottery?
Oh, yes, it does. I always teach the kids in school. I'll say, do you have muscles? Because you have to have a lot of strength to carry clay, but also to work it and pound it together. You have to have strength in your hands, strength in your fingers, but your whole body goes into making clay. Your feet have to stand still or be strong, so it holds your body up. Your back goes into making clay. So it takes a lot of strength to make clay, but also it takes, I think, a spiritual strength as well. Your spirit has to be into it. You have to get to know the clay. The clay becomes part of you, and you become a part of the clay. And so it's a spiritual element between you and what you're making and what your hands are doing. And so we always say, talk to the clay. A lot of times I'll talk with my clay, I'll sing to it, say different things to it. And a lot of times it will reflect back to me and talk back to me, you could say, because I can begin to hear my elders teaching me as I work with clay. And there's always a lesson in clay. It's not going to be perfect all the time. It takes a lot of work to get to making pieces of pottery like this, but everybody can make pottery. Everybody can make clay.
A lot of people are interested in the colors of your pottery and where you get the clay from, the red, the white, the black on the robin pot.
Okay, well, this right here is all red clay and white clay. It's natural clay that comes here from North Carolina. The white and black clay is actually red and white clay. But what I did was I added iron oxide into the clay and it made it turn black. So there's a little bit of science in that, but when I mix it into the red clay, you don't see the black color until it's fired. And then once it's fired, then the black color comes to the clay.
That's a good science. There's science and art and chemistry all mixed up together.
Oh, yes.
Somebody wants to know about the rock again, polishing the clay. What kind of rock is it and how does that work?
Okay, the rock is very important. The most important thing is that you want to get a very smooth river rock. So any rock that you can get from the water where the water's been tumbling the rock around. It makes it really nice and smooth. And the beautiful thing about using a polishing stone is the more you use the stone, the smoother the stone gets, and also the smoother your pottery gets. Now I'll show you how I work with the stone. It's not going to really show the shiny part, but what I do is I take the rock and I rub it onto the clay. And as I rub it into the clay, you can see it a little bit. As I rub it into the clay, it will make it get really, really shiny. But when you catch this at the right time, which is a little bit past what we call leather hard, when the clay starts to get so hard that you can't smush it, then you can use the rock and rub it on the clay. It makes it shiny, it makes it smooth, it forces the clay to press together, and it begins to make it waterproof. So the more you buff it with the rock, the more you polish it, the better it gets. So it's really an awesome thing to do. It's amazing what the rock does. But this is just a regular old rock that I got out of a creek, and it just really works perfect.
So they want to know, is your pottery fired or is it air dried? How long does it take?
Okay. Well, this particular piece is fired in the earth, and these are fired in a kiln. And so it takes, just for the ones that are in the kiln, it's a 2-day process. So I'll fire them in the kiln. I keep them in there all night long, and then it takes a whole day before I can get them out. This particular one right here is pit fired. So that's fired down in the ground, and we get up early in the morning, and we always cook a big pot of soup whenever we do our pit firing. So that one's put down into the earth, and then that takes all day as well. We build this huge fire, then we build these big pieces of log that go on top of the fire, and we just watch over it all day long, and then the next day we get the pots out. And this one is all different colors, and our people would say that if you fire your pots on a cloudy day, you get cloudy pots. So I think that's why that one came out more cloudy. A lot of times we like it for it to be darker, blacker, nicer, and smoother, but that's how, that one came out during the pit firing. But as far as drying goes, once I make a piece of pottery, I'll let it sit and dry for at least 5 days before I fire them.
How do you get the pictures on the pottery?
So the pictures on the pottery are all hand carved. So I don't use any molds or patterns or any stencils, anything like that. I just start creating my designs into the clay. So this is one of my tools, and this is more of a modern tool. This is called a stylus, and this has a really sharp point on the end. And once the pottery dries, and I paint it with the white clay, and then when that dries, then I just start taking my tool and drawing the designs into the clay. And it just kind of comes out of my head. I just think about, like this one, for instance, is my hand. So this is actually my hand. So I took my hand and put on the pottery, and then I just traced my own hand, and then I just started thinking about the design. So once it's completely painted with the white clay, I use this tool, and then I start drawing my designs. So everything is done by hand. And so I just, the creator just gives me these ideas, and then I just start putting them on my pottery.
Do you use any glass in your pottery?
Glass. That's an interesting question. I have put like glass beads on my pottery. I have this idea. I did do this one piece of pottery where I chopped up these beads, these glass beads, and I put it into some cracks that happen to come on my pottery. And so I do have these dreams and ideas of inlaying stones and rocks and glass into my pottery. So maybe that's in the future.
So this is a question we get all the time about artifacts at the museum. Do you have a favorite piece of pottery?
Well, I've let go of a lot of favorite ones. Sometimes as an artist, you make things and you want to hold on to them, and then you let them go because people want to get them. And also too, because a lot of times when I'm presenting my work, I really want to have the best things that I make on the table. And oftentimes those best pieces get bought, which is a great thing. But my favorite piece of pottery that I probably have today would probably be my bear. And I often say he's my boyfriend. And I just love this bear ever since I made it. He's my good luck charm. and I put it on the table, and he travels with me almost everywhere I go. And so I would say at the moment, the bear is my favorite. But I will also say that when I'm working on my dream catchers, it's just really relaxing to weave the web into the dream catcher.
Why do you have so many turtles in your pottery?
Well, I do have lots of turtles on my pottery. The turtle is a very important animal. Um, you see, I have a lot of turtles, and we have a place at home called Panacea Springs, and it's a natural turtle rock that's so huge. I mean, he is old stone carving of a turtle called Panacea Springs. And so I got my inspiration to make my pottery with the turtle because our people said that that was a sacred area and very special. But the turtle itself represents long life, and it's a universal thing. It's one of our animal clans. The turtle represents long life, Mother Earth, Grandmother Moon, protection, friendship. It also represents fertility because the turtle can have lots of babies. We give the turtle away to people who get married and wish for them to have many, many children. So the turtle is a blessing of fertility as well.
So you've mentioned your tribe, the Haliwa-Saponi, but tell us again about how your pottery expresses what it means about Haliwa-Saponi culture and tradition.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I think my pottery represents the Haliwa-Saponi. Now, historically, when you look at old pots found in our community, they were not this elaborate. But I decided to take our traditional ways and put it into the pottery because when you look at some of the old pots, our ancient Native American pottery, sometimes it has pattern designs and things like that are so long gone into the past. And the creator, he's given us those ways back. He's bringing them back to us. But I decided that I wanted my pottery to represent the Haliwa-Saponi. And when you think about our traditional ways when I was growing up, just living off of the land, living with the trees. We used to play in the trees. We used to run and pick up bugs and animals, so we're part of the land. And so when I think about my pottery, I think about all of those little things that I grew up with, the things my mother would say, my grandmother would say, and they would just tell me little things about the moon, the changing of the moon, the earth. And then I said, well, that's the designs I'm going to put on my pottery. And if you notice the turtle, if you ever seen a natural turtle, when you look at the back of a turtle, they have cracks on their backs, and then they have little spots on their shells. And our people would say that the turtle and the moon are related. So we call the moon Grandmother Moon, and then we call the earth Mother Earth, which is part of the turtle. And so when you look at the moon and the turtle, the moon changes 13 times through the year. And on the back of every natural turtle, they have 13 blocks on the back. The moon also changes every 28 days. And on the back of the turtle, the little spots are the 28 days, and they represent the changing of the moon. And so our people would always have a gathering or a ceremony based on the moon. And so we're reviving a lot of our ceremonies today. So that's really why the turtle has been so important to me, to bring back that family clan, that unity. And, if you look around from tribe to tribe, you'll find that the turtle is very important all the way from New York, Maryland, Virginia, all the way out west. The turtle has a very important meaning to many of the tribes. So it's kind of like a universal symbol.
So you've spoken a lot about continuing traditions and heritage from the past, but do members of the Haliwa-Saponi tribe live as their ancestors did hundreds and hundreds of years ago?
No, we don't quite live like our ancestors did hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Sometimes I wish we could go back in time and live just like they did, right off of the earth, living right with Mother Earth and nothing else. But our life is very different now than it was hundreds of years ago. Our people would have lived in longhouses and wigwams and wiggy ups here on the east coast of North Carolina and the eastern part of our state. We would live in longhouses. But we no longer live in longhouses anymore. We do still build longhouses for historical reasons, just to replicate that old style of life. But we don't live in longhouses like my ancestors did. But we do still hunt. We do fish. We still carry out ceremonies. We have our tribal gatherings, our tribal powwows. We have songs and dances. We are having songs with our language. We are teaching our young people our language. And so we're still living some of the ways of our ancestors, but we're also living in this modern world that we live in today. I often say I walk in two worlds. I walk in my native world, but I also walk in my American world. You know, the language that I'm speaking is basically English, but we also carry out our ceremonies. We carry our prayers. We do tobacco bundles, and we share our prayers with each other. We have coming of age ceremonies, just like my ancestors did. So we are doing some of the things from the past, but we are very much living in the modern world today.
This has been wonderful. We have one more question. Have you been keeping count? Well, actually, two questions combined. Keeping count of how many pieces of pottery you've made in your life? And one more time, when did you start making pottery?
Oh, wow. Oh, well, I started when I was 14, and I am 58 years old now. So it's 44 years altogether, but I stopped for a while and got back into making pottery about 27 years now. So I started way back, but I stopped, and then now I've been making pottery about 29 years. And what was the other part of that question?
Do you keep count of how many pieces of pottery you've made?
Wow. And people ask me that all the time. They'll say, how many turtles have you made? And I'm thinking, no, I never kept count of how many pieces I made. I can't say that certain pieces I've only made 3 or 4 of, and then some pieces I've only made just maybe 1. But then most of the turtles, I make many turtles. I used to wonder if I could go back and count how many turtles I made for every presentation I've done or everywhere I've traveled. But thousands of turtles. I have made thousands of turtles. And if I had just kept like $10 off of each turtle, I might have a lot of money right now. So I will say too that this is what I do for a living. So I make my art, taking my Native American traditional culture and made it into my life. And so I make my work and I sell it. I do remember the very first piece that I sold. I was just showing my work at a cultural event we were doing in our tribe. And this lady came up and she really insisted on buying a piece of my pottery. And then after she purchased a piece of my pottery, she gave me the idea that I could probably start selling it. And so now I sell my pottery all over different places. And I will say also too that my work is in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., in the American Indian Museum of the Smithsonian. I also have work here at the North Carolina Museum of History that's in their permanent collection. I have work in the Piscataway Museum in Maryland. I also have work in the Sioux Museum in South Dakota. So I have many pieces of work all over different places here in the United States.